You're watching the free version of Mocha Essentials. Follow along with projects and footage with a premium download available at BorisFX.com. In this exercise, we're going to be looking at how we can use Mocha that's integrated into the Continuum and Sapphire plugins. So we're going to take this image here, which is just a simple tilt down on a street, and we're going to add a couple of effects to it and make it look a little bit sort of lighter and shinier. So we've added in some light rays and a big giant lens flare. And at the end of this, maybe we can adjust how these are working together. But the idea is that Mocha is found everywhere in the Continuum and Sapphire plugin sets. And I'm going to show you how we can use this for parameter tracking, so tracking an object to a parameter in an effect, and also how we can use this to do masking as well. And there are huge similarities between how this is handled in both Continuum and Sapphire, but we'll go over the small differences. We'll also look at some of the core things we can do with Mocha and some of the nice quick techniques. So let's get into it. I'm in my working composition now, and let's go and add our first effect. I'm going to come to BCC Lights and go to Rays Streaky. And rays just gives us a light rays coming out from hot sources. I'm going to change this from colorized to image, so we're just going to be using the main image. What I want to do is just stylize the look of this light, so it looks like there's more light coming out and looking a little bit more interesting. So I'll crank up the ray length, and we can see that coming down here. I'll probably change the texture here to shimmer and strings. Yep, so we can see the shimmer coming in there. So just add a little bit back in. So that's about, actually we'll leave it around about 100, and you can start to see what this is going to be doing now. So this looks fine on a single frame, but obviously when it moves up, it doesn't look realistic because the light source is staying the same, and it just looks like we've added a filter to it. Not great. So we want to animate our light source. And I don't want to hand animate it, so we're going to use motion tracking. Now in Continuum filters, there are two places we can use Mocha. Many effects have Motion Tracker /Mocha, and all effects have Pixelchooser /Mocha. If we want to do parameter tracking, so if we want to link an effect parameter, in this case light source, to an area in the image, we would come down into Motion Tracking, Mocha, and click on that. And this will bring us into the Mocha interface. Now, if your interface doesn't look the same as mine, just come up to our workspace selection here and make sure you're on the Essentials workspace. It might look a bit like this. This is, a lot more information than we need right now. So we're just going to work in Essentials mode to begin with. And Essentials sets up the main things that we need. So in our layers in the top left-hand corner, we can see we have effect trackers, and this will show layers for all of the parameters that we can motion track to, or connect to motion trackers, I should say. And that's shown by this circle here. So this is our search area. And generally speaking, we're going to be putting this around the area that we want to track. We also have let's bring this down to where we can see it. We also have a point here which says light source. This is the actual point we're going to be taking back out to our effect. So we always want that to be where we want the center of the effect to be. In this case, it's going to be in the middle of the light, and these two are the same. So now we've got that set up, we can come and have a look at our track motion options in the left-hand side. And this is the type of motion tracking we need. So we have translation, which is just position, and scale, rotation, skew, and perspective. Now for parameter tracking, we're usually only worried about things like translation, maybe scale and rotation. Now if we scrub through the shot using the time ruler at the bottom of the viewer, you can see that our light source doesn't really change shape or do anything really apart from change position. So I can turn on and off these extra things just by clicking on them. And in this case, we only want to be tracking in translation. Now, this is all the information that I actually need. And I'm going to hit track forwards. And this is going to have a little think and start to track my image. I'm going to hit stop in a second, just before our light disappears off screen. And throughout this course, you're going to hear the phrase planar tracker used time and time again. And we're going to be discussing what that really means in the next exercise. So I just need you to take a little bit of a leap of faith with me here. Now, when our image goes off screen, with many types of trackers, this would be it. Once it's off screen, we can't do anything about it. With the way the Mocha tracker is set up, I can move our search area to somewhere else that is coplanar. So somewhere else that shares the same sort of movement as our image that we're tracking. In this case, I'm just going to move it down onto the building here. I can also use this transform box to change the shape so we don't actually have to have it stuck as a circle. If you think that this is a better area to track, so this pattern is easier to find in later frames, then we can make our search area bigger or smaller. And with this done, I'm just going to keep tracking forwards. I don't have to change anything else up. And look what happens to our light source. Our light source moves off screen, which means that the point that we're applying data also moves off screen, but it moves in a nice, consistent way. And that's because the area that we're searching for is obviously still on screen. So this looks good to me. All I'm going to do now is hit save. And then I can go File and Exit. I can also save our project here, or I can just hit X on this one here. And if we have any unsaved data, it will ask me to save at that point. I just like hitting the save button first so that there's no confusion. Okay, so now we're back in our host in After Effects. Let's take a look what happens as we scrub through. And I'll turn off the HUD so that we don't get confused by what that's doing. And if I do a quick RAM preview now, we'll be able to see that the rays are actually sticking along with the light. If I show the motion path on this, you can see my motion path going off screen, but following exactly where it needs to go. There we go. Let's turn the motion path off so we don't have to worry about that. You can turn whether it uses the Mocha tracking on and off just by going to Apply and then setting that to None. And that turns off motion tracking or the Mocha motion tracking. It doesn't apply it there. But if we hit Apply to the light source, everything fits in nicely. So that's one way of using Mocha as a parameter tracker. The other way of doing it is to use it to do masks. And that's where Pixelchooser comes in Continuum. I'm going to open up this. I'm going to come down to Pixelchooser, turn this on, and then click on Mocha Mask / track. And this brings us back into Mocha. And it also, if I open up our layers in the top left, it also shows the things that we already tracked. Now here's a good time to start to figure out what these buttons are doing. We're going to go into more depth at a later stage, but I just want to show you what this cog button does. Now, wherever you see the cog, this means that these layers are going to have some action applied to them. If we're in the tracker mode, which we are right now, it means that these layers are going to be tracked. And we have a little group for our effect trackers, so I can turn off tracking on the group, and then none of the other stuff within that group is going to be tracked in. I can also turn off the visibility here, so we've pretty much got a blank canvas. So what I want to do with this is I want to just mask off our rays so that they're only applying around the main area of our light. So I'm going to come up to our top toolbar and I'm going to select one of our shape splines. And I'm going to use the circle spline or the ellipse spline. And I'm going to click and drag to draw my ellipse. We can then change the shape either by changing the points, as we did here, or by using a similar thing with the white dotted transform box, something we did with the effect tracker, and we can just transform the whole shape altogether. And I'll just double click on my layer 2 and rename this to circle mask, just so you know what's going on. Now I could retrack this just by choosing what my track options are and then tracking forwards. But we can also link tracks together. So I've already done the hard work with the tracking the light source. So all I'm going to do is go link to track, and I'm going to link my circle mask to my light source. I'm just going to undo that for a second. I want you to look down at the bottom here. So on the timeline, all of my frames are red, which means that this shape has no tracking data on it. If I go link to track light source, all of that turns blue, which means I'm getting track data, or I have track data applied to all the frames. So if I play that through, that gives me the shape that I'm after. So again, just hit save, file, exit, and let's turn up the brightness so we can see this a bit easier, or a lot easier. There we go. And you can see that my effect now is being constrained to the masks that I just created. And you can see I've got a hard edge going around there. I might not want that. So if I come all the way down to my Pixelchooser Mocha, go into my mask, I can feather this up and sort of blend that in a lot easier. And that's given me the rays around just this light now. If I turn off my Pixelchooser, we're not taking in any of the other lights, which would look a little bit distracting. Turn my Pixelchooser back on. And that's the basic way of how we use Mocha within a continuum effect. If you want to see how we can use that within Sapphire, let's come into our Sapphire, we go to lighting, and we'll add a lens flare. I'll just load up another preset for my lens flare here. And I'll use the Canon Sumir. It's a nice big flare. There we go. I'll actually take my width down so that it matches the light source a little bit easier, or a little bit better. There we go, something around about there. I want to track this flare now to Mocha. Now, Sapphire effects have Mocha up at the top rather than down at the bottom. So if I go into Edit Mocha, you see we get the same interface come up. And in this case, this effect has two things we can track. We can track the pivot or the hotspot. I don't want to track the pivot. So remember, we turn off the cog on layers we don't want to track. And I do want to track the hotspot. And I'm just going to bring this down because I know that we can just set this and let it go throughout the whole thing. And I only want to track in translation, so I'll turn the other two off, and I will track this forwards. Now, the nice thing about Mocha being everywhere is that we can save out our Mocha project and import them into other effects, or just use it in the standalone or plugin version of Mocha. Just using the file up here, we can export our project, or we can merge our project or open up an old project here. I'm not going to do that here. I'm very happy that my hotspot is in the right place. Let's move that there. And let's exit out of here. I forgot to save, so let's hit save. And Sapphire, you have to look down for the parameter to use Mocha. So here, hotspot uses Mocha. We'll just turn that on. And now our hotspot follows in correctly. And essentially, that's it. That's how we can use the Mocha that is integrated within Sapphire and Continuum effects, either to drive parameter effects or to drive masks. And in the way that we linked our mask shape to our parameter tracking, we can also do the opposite as well. Say we have a shape that we can't track with the basic circle. We could create a more complex shape and move that around, and then link our parameter to that other shape, and that would work in the same way. So this exercise has been a quick walkthrough on how we would use Mocha within Sapphire and Continuum. In the next exercise, I'm going to be talking about how Mocha works on a more fundamental level. And this is going to be essential for everyone who's going to be using Mocha on more than the simplest of footage. So join me in the next exercise, Introduction to Mocha's Planar Tracker. And I'll see you on the other side. You've been watching the free version of Mocha Essentials. To download all videos, projects and footage, purchase the premium version available at BorisFX.com.